So, without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce This is another in a series of live broadcasts enjoying the creative sounds of music and harmony. Hope you enjoy. Don't touch that dial. Keep it locked. Tuned in and turned on.
Welcome to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Not just numbers, not just stats. It's about what they mean. And now, your host, the Maestro.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast, hosted by the Maestro, that's me. And this week, we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about a couple other things, but we're going to start off talking about leadership. And in that leadership, we're going to talk about where it counts. And that's coming from the team itself. The coach leads, yes. The leader, the administrative leadership of the team leads, yes, true. But where it really counts for the players who lace it up always comes from the bench. And a lot of times, yes, it's recognized by the leadership roles are recognized and often held by the player who might have the most stats, the best stats on the team, because they're going to be more recognized by members of the media, members of the press, however you want to call it. However, it's interesting to see and always a pleasure to know that there is this other person on the team that might not statistically grab everybody's attention, but have everybody's attention that sits on the bench with them. And this week, we're going to talk about a player that this is actually the very first request topic for the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. So I want to give a huge shout out to the person who requested, Mr. Benari James, who talked about someone on the team that he felt should get some recognition as their leader, someone he felt as though he felt strong enough about to say that they were his big brother. And that was a motivator for the team. And if you've laced it up with anybody, if you've been in the locker room, you know what that means. That means someone when after bad losses, no such thing as a good loss, but after bad losses and everyone's sitting there and all these questions are rolling around in your head. What if I would have made that free throw? What if I would have taken that charge? What if I would have, what if I wouldn't have stepped on the line? What if I wouldn't have gotten that foul? All those things that sort of go through your head. That one player that can give you that look, maybe say that word, maybe put their arm around you, not necessarily in the physical sense always, but in the spiritual sense or in the mental sense to let you know, look, we got this, we're going to be okay, we're going to move forward. That's so important. And the fact that Benari, without hesitation, can put this person's name up speaks well of them. And so let's talk about them real quick. Mr. Towns Romanowski. Mr. Towns Romanowski is not at the top of the stats anywhere on the team. He is not a place that you might easily say, oh, yeah, that guy right there. And if you've heard anything I just said for the last 2 minutes and 40 seconds, then you know that that person who might say that, they don't really know what team sports is about. Because you have to have that person that's on the side, that on the sideline with you, that you can look to, that you can lean on, that they can also lean on you. But that person that you know, whenever the team starts to kind of cave in a little bit, they can stand there in the middle of the storm and help everybody stand up straight. And Towns does that. Towns does that for the Indy Stripes, a team that is on the outside looking in right now in terms of the race to one. A team that a lot of people felt like should be in the race to one with the talent that they have, with what's going on and how close they may or may not be. We can see they're technically, as the time of this podcast recording, they're only a game and a half out of last place in the race to one in their conference. So when you see that, you see a team that is fighting for position. Now, they have a lot of teams to jump over, but it's not like they do not have what it takes to do so. And if they're going to do so, they're going to need to lean on a player like Romanowski, a player that can keep his head on his shoulders and be the person that the team needs to not let everything spiral out of control. Big wins, everyone's popping the bottles, everyone being cool, everyone's feeling great about themselves. That's easy. Close wins, big wins, that's fine. Give me the guy, give me the woman, give me the player who stands up after a loss and doesn't let anyone hold their head down. Give me that person. Let me know I have that person on my bench, and I know that we're going to win. I know that we're going to pull through and do everything we can to be as big and as good as we can be to get things done. Every great team has had that leader that has always shown up, whether they've trained the new people that came on board in a way, let's just say, for instance, the way Moses Malone took on Charles Barkley and changed his life, so much so that Charles Barkley even called the man dad, for crying out loud. You know, the same way that Daryl Dawkins came on and had the leadership roles of all those great players on Philadelphia. You know, I love the ill, so I'm just gonna say it like it is. Um, you know how Daryl Dawkins, the very first man child, the very first player to sort of get recognition. Now people forget that Moses Malone also came right out of high school, but Daryl Dawkins was the one that everyone paid attention to coming out of high school and thought he was going to be all that there was at a time when there were so many great players in the league. Well, anyway, people forget he sat on the bench 2 years. 2 years under the stewardship of so many other players who taught him not just about leadership on the court, but leadership off the court. And he became that. Got a chance to watch him coach a semi-professional basketball team in Brooklyn. It was really great to see and see him become a leader of men and to see all those and take all those lessons that he learned to bring them to the table in order to give people an opportunity to learn the way he learned and be better. And every team needs that. Go through every championship team. There is always that player that's not a starter, that's not a headliner, that always gives their opportunity, that always gives their team an opportunity to move forward. And Towns Romanowski does that for the Indy Stripes. It's going to be very interesting to see how they fight to overcome this game and a half deficit to maybe play their way into the race to one. Be definitely with all the talent that you have, especially in that conference. It's going to be a fun fight to see all the way down to the table. So bravo, Zulu Towns. Well done. Way to earn that respect. You keep doing what you're doing, blood. You got it all covered. So when we come back on the next half of this podcast, we're going to talk about the race to one and exactly what does it mean right now as we look ahead for the rest of the season, as short as it may seem to be already. You're listening to the Talk Dirty podcast with the Maestro. Catch you on the other side.
Thank you for listening to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro.
Want to get involved? Bring it. Drop in discord.gg/SimWorld NBA.
If you have the brain,
Join as a coach.
If you have the game,
Join as a player.
See the game, be the game. But now, back to Talk Dirty to Me with the Maestro.
Once again, for the Soul Children String section, y'all.
Let's get back to some wonderful sounds.
And welcome back to the second half of episode 4 of Talk Dirty to Me. I want to start off this particular section with an apology. An apology to two players who have put in the work all year and are on the Dirty Dirty squad. And in my last podcast, I did not omit them on purpose. It was a mistake. It was a mistake on my side. I'm not going to say my bad. That doesn't cut it. I messed up, and it will never happen again. Mugen Williams of the G5 and Corey Yams of Showtime. Mugen Williams with 6, Corey Yams with 7 dirty stat lines this season, but they are always putting in the work to put their team in a position to be successful. They're always aware of where their teammates are. They always are aware of what they need to do to put their teammates in a position to succeed. And oh, by the way, It shows with how they are aware, because I've been lucky enough to call their games. I've been lucky enough to watch their games following up with the post up. And one thing that I've always said about them, their court awareness, their spatial awareness, their willingness to fill in the gaps where no one else happens to be is is one of the talents of their basketball IQ that shows every single night. Now the outcomes might not always be what we think it should be, or in some cases what we want it to be. But these two particular players, regardless of what else is going on, put it on the floor every single night to give their team a chance, whether it's picking up points, picking up assists, grabbing rebounds, getting steals, making blocks. Those 5 things you got to do in a single game on a single stat line. And they do that. And their numbers have always changed according to what their team needs. Sometimes the choices are, I have to be the person to make this happen. Sometimes I have to do it in support of someone else, as what we see with Corey Ems does as he works with Bronny James, a deadly duo of dirty dirties, how they're able to put up those stat lines every night to move their team forward. And Mugen Williams is able to do it with some help from the other side, but he just takes it on, all gas, no breaks. You appreciate seeing that. I love watching it. Will always love watching it and can't wait to watch these guys grow more. I am sorry. You are dirty, dirty to the core. You got your parking spot on the island and you got extra buffet privileges for the next 5 months. All right, fellas. So let's talk about what that means in terms of dirty dirties as we look forward to what it means helping your team move forward in the race to one. You can have a player that can have every single stat line filled, right? However, if it is in low production, when I say low production, I mean in terms of it doesn't translate over to the rest of the team stepping up, you don't get the wins. You might get the stat line, but you don't get the wins. And we've seen that quite a bit this season, where it's great to see one player go out and they ball out all the way and they fill up every single line in the stat book. However, if it's not being reciprocated or at least supported in some level across the bench, guess what? That player balls out. The rest of the team they're lacing up against, they just play solid basketball. That team's going to get the win. So it has to be something that has to help your team move forward. And it also means the magic word, it has to be the team. It has to be in support of the team and what the team's scheme is, what the game plan is, what the coach's vision of what we need to do this particular game to move forward. And speaking of moving forward in the race to one, that's exactly what we're talking about here. We have 2 conferences that could not be any more different than one would imagine. We have one conference where the 7-8 Legacy Conference, where the 7 and 8 teams, Atlantis and Bad Boys, are right at the 500 mark at the recording of this podcast. And then you have the Legend Conference, where you have the 7 and 8 team that are sub 500 at this particular point. Now, we can read into this whatever you want to, but let's just take a little step further, not talk about necessarily teams that are in the race to the one, but the ones who are fighting to get into the race to one. And I'm give you that one clue or that one key that I think needs to be done in order to put your team in a position to win. So in the Legacy Conference, you have 6 teams that are outside looking in, but they are a game and a half away from the 8th place position. Now, the further you're down on that game and a half list, and oh, by the way, those teams are beyond. They are Cascadia, Europe, Lakeshore Drive, the Philadelphia Elite, and the Indy Stripes. The further you are down that list, unfortunately, more calculus have to move in your favor in order to get you across the hump. In other words, you need to win, and a lot of other teams need to lose. And the more we compound that, right? Let's just do some straight metrics on this. The more teams above you that have to lose, you're compounding the failure mechanism that was going to keep you out of the race to one. And because of that, you're going to have to not only work hard, but you're going to need help. On the other side, in the Legend Conference, you only have 4 teams that are a game and a half out of the 8th place position. That's the Yacht Club, Queen City Kings, Gulf Coast, and Latin America. Now, those squads, game and a half out of that 8th place position, that means one thing. They don't need as much calculus to go in their favor, which is a good thing, or that it doesn't mean that you cannot afford a misstep. So let's talk about how to avoid that misstep. The key thing that a lot of people will say is, oh, you need to outscore the team. And as simplistic as that might sound, yes, that's just true, but that's not where we're going to come from here today. The one factor, the one thing that you can do to put your team in a position to win every possession, every quarter, every half, every game is hit the boards. At this particular point, you have got to get dirty on the boards. That means you need to change possessions. You need to keep possessions. That means you need to score off of those renewed possessions, because the more you do that, the less time the team you're lacing up against has to do the same to you. So if you can only do so much in your scoring output because your shooters are who they are, if you can only do so much in the other aspects of the game, the one aspect of the game that you can control with the will and effort is rebounding. And it's going to start with the shooters. If you take a jump shot and you're not sure if the ball is going in, but you sit there and pose, one, you're not a good shooter. Two, that's just not smart on any level. And three, you definitely can't be on my team. The one person who knows whether or not they made the shot or not is the shooter. If you're looking at the opposite side of the rim like you're trained to do, and that's your aiming spot for where the ball to drop to, that means you're over the point of positivity, which means the actual rim of the basket. Give yourself a chance. However, when you release that shot and you're not sure if it's going to go in, but you're going to pose anyway, you're wasting everybody's time and you're hurting your team. You follow your shot. You, more than anyone else, should know where the ball is going to go according to the angle that has left your hand. And if you don't, then you got some stuff to work on, fam, because you are putting your team in a horrible position to not be able to benefit from that particular possession. So it starts with the shooters following their shot, something coaches say all the time. It also starts with the people who are not shooting, who may be opposite side, or let's just say off ball side on the court. When you see a shot go up, you should be able to notice the trajectory, what's going on with the ball. You charge in unless you're the last man back, of course, then you're going to drop back just in case there is a long rebound and they'll try to stop the other team from getting a breakaway. But if you're not that person, when you see that ball go up and you know it's going to be, oh, it looks a little bit to the right, that means guess what's going to happen? With the reverse spin on the ball, it's going to hit, it's going to kick line drive right. You need to be in that position. So when the ball kicks that way, there you are. You got it. If you have an open lane to the basket, you take it, go straight up to the rim, choose violence, like I always say. Get yourself points off of that possession, positive possession. You stop the other team from having a possession, then we can move on to the next possession. Rebounding is about will. It's also about smarts, recognizing what's happening. And if you are not willing to do that, especially right now, if everybody thinks, well, I'm just going to score more than the other team, you are putting your team in a horrible position to not make the wins when they count. Don't be that player. Understand, this is the one thing you can bring to the table every night. If I'm in someone else's gym, the sight lines are different. The depth perception is different. Whether you're playing in the Superdome or whether you're playing in an arena or wherever, like in my day of playing high school and college ball, everything will look different. You can say just focus on the rim, but your brain picks up everything else, whether you realize it or not. So that means, guess what? The way you approach that shot, your technique for that shot is going to change just enough, just on the microscopic muscular level, that's going to make that shot a little bit more difficult. However, the one thing that doesn't change is when you crash the boards and you choose to have an attitude and put in the effort to get the ball back for your team. If you do that, if you just increase that, I guarantee you're going to see your team wins start going up, but you're going to put yourself in a position to not only necessarily maintain your position in the race to one. You might find yourself putting your team in a position that they can actually move into the race to one if you're on the outside. Anything else you want to hear about? Anything else you want to talk about? We're going to go through so many things as we move forward on this podcast. Thank everybody for your energy and all that you've been putting into and all the advice that I've been getting and questions. Give us another topic. Give us multiple topics. Give me something that you really want to hear about. Maybe a player, maybe a coach. Put it out there, fam. Holla at your boy. Let's go on and do this. This is our ship. Let's go and just pilot it all the way, all right? And again, shout out to Mugen Williams and Corey Yams. I am sorry. My bad does not cut it. There is no excuse. You saw my notes. You saw what's up. I love watching you guys do what you do. Way too much to have made that omission without it just simply being an error on my behalf. It will never happen again. Appreciate you guys. Love watching you do what you do. Keep it up, keep it going, and keep me straight, because that's what fam do. All right, everyone else, same for you. We'll see you next week on the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. And you know what? I get heat for this, but I'm just going to tell you anyway, because nobody tends to listen to me. If you are a glass awning in New York City, eventually Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to fall right through you and break you all up.
I mean, I didn't realize we were starting right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for checking out the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Drop a tag below and give us a piece of your mind.
So, see you next time and talk dirty to me.